Yo, welcome to another Beard Progress vlog. What's going on, guys? Pansy here with another PVE tier list for BDO. Normally, I don't do these so frequently. I like to space them out by 6 months to a year, but because of the sheer number of changes that PA's done over the last 2 months, we have to do this because it did change the tier list. Also, some of the classes I felt like I overestimated and some I underestimated in the last tier list, and I want to properly represent them here. And yeah, you won't see a huge difference from my last tier list. There's only a few classes which really shuffle around, but you will see that the tier list has shrunk. There's less tiers involved because, you know, the game's getting more balanced, and that's good. The game's never been this balanced in PvE, and I hope it keeps getting better. Now, one thing though, people do comment about this all the time, but hey, listen, I don't like splitting up the icons between Awakening and Succession because it gets way too cluttered, and it's much easier to represent, in my opinion, to just consider the dominant spec. If you're playing a weaker spec in PvE while another spec is performing much better, that's on you, okay? So for this tier list, we're going to take the dominant spec of each class and place it in the rank. Before we get started, let me tell you about our sponsor today. You probably haven't heard of him. Today's video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is the #1 turn-based MMORPG on the market, and it brings you AAA quality gameplay straight to your phone. With over 600 champions, hundreds of artifacts to equip, mix and match your builds to overcome any foe. Explore a variety of game modes such as campaign, dungeons, faction wars, PvP arenas, clan bosses, and the Doom Tower. Raid Shadow Legends have celebrated their 3rd anniversary and have never stopped bringing new updates. Since the release of Raid, they have added a plethora of new content for you to challenge. To name a few, an entirely new faction called the Shadowkin, the Doom Tower, a game mode with over 120 levels, epic boss fights and challenges, and a clan boss to take on with your squad called the Hydra. But the hype doesn't stop there. Just this month, Raid released a new feature called Awakening. Awaken your champion and choose a powerful blessing to transform their combat potential and take on their new dungeon, the Iron Twins Fortress. And from now till October 27th, participate in the 7-day login event to unlock your very own legendary champion, the Ultimate Death Knight. Use the promo code DKRises for a bunch of free items to instantly level up your new champion to 50 with a 5-star ascension, easy peasy. But the freebies don't stop there. New players can sign up with my link in the description down below or the QR code on screen and get a starter pack worth almost $30 with a new champion and awesome in-game loot. So check it out, Raid Shadow Legends. So like, people keep telling me that I got a lot fatter, but in fact I actually lost 12 pounds in the last 2 months. My face just looks a lot bigger because of all the facial hair. Like, actually my chin's over here, you know? Alright folks, now that we've established the baseline chin position, I feel like we can get started with this video, and the first class we're going to talk about is Drakania. In my last tier list, I put her in a very low position, but I felt like that was a bit misleading. The reason I put her in such a low position is because at the time Awakening just came out, and I knew there were going to be a plethora of changes that they needed to do in order to actually bring her into her rightful place, because obviously that is a very dynamic class where you're switching between 2 stances in Awakening, and it's going to be clunky. There's going to be a lot of issues, and her damage was quite underwhelming. But as far as Succession went, Succession wasn't too terrible. I mean, in a place where you could actually smack the mobs like 1 to 2 shot mobs, she was actually pretty decent. The reason why I put her in such a low position was her performance once you get to like higher end mobs where they're a lot stronger. I felt like she was underwhelming, but you know, I should have at least put her in A rank. I don't think she was in B rank unplayable, but I felt like she should have been in A. But since then, there have been quite a bit of changes to Drakania. Obviously, there's been a whole lot of changes for Awakening. We're not going to go over all of them because there's so many, but basically a lot of improvements in fluidity, her combos, the way they're chaining the skills together, and the damage have been improved. Drakania Awakening is more APM, like because of the sheer number of skills we have. She was quite intensive. Like when I first started playing her in the first week, she pulled about 18k at orcs versus my strikers like 22 to 23k. But she wasn't too bad. I felt like she could only get better from there, and I was bad at playing the class. Like, that was with like very little practice. So, you know, I think she is in a good spot now after all the changes. Like, even Succession actually got some PvE buffs, despite her getting nerfed in PvP. PvP, she really needed that, so no arguments there. But I think she is in a good spot now. They could probably tune her a little bit more, maybe like 10% in the damage range for PvE. But at the same time, I think she's in an okay spot. I don't think any class needs to be pushed to like S tier and meta level. Like, I think every class being an A plus is going to be like the dream, where everything is in one tier and it's like, pick whatever you want, play whatever class you like. And spoiler alert, I'm not putting any class in A or B. I feel like every class is in a good spot, or it's in top tier or meta level. Like, I think we're going in the right direction, but I do want to talk about all the changes that transpired and talk a little bit about the classes, so you have a better idea of what to expect in a class, and maybe that helps you make your decision on what you want to play. Next class we're going to talk about is Tamer, whose character model was recently updated, so she's actually 30% shorter now. Kidding, that didn't happen, but I know a few of you got excited. You know who you are. FBI is watching you, man. Be better. Yo, zoomed in. All right, so Tamer has had a ton of changes since the summer. Like, they've been constantly making additions to her, and honestly, I'm surprised that they actually reworked her to that extent, and it's a good thing. It's good to see PAs actually adding skills and mechanically changing a class rather than just trying to tweak their damage and, you know, in a simple manner. It's not that easy. Classes are like mechanically gifted and some are not. Like, you got to go into the depths of the class to actually make a difference. So, you know, that's what they did with Tamer. As you guys know, there's been a lot of buffs. They got the legendary Beast Dance skill, which gave them the resonance for Vermilion Bird, White Tiger, Black Turtle, and Azure Dragon. And since then, they've also got like more protection, more mechanical changes. Like, they got a frontal guard on Beast Rampage. Their howling damage got a damage buff, which is like great. I mean, it's good to see that they, even after like the major reboot level changes, then again a new change, is like they're still updating it, and I think it's at a good spot now. Like, after all of those changes, I think it is actually at a decent spot. It's not at S tier spot, it's not broken or anything, but I think she's doing pretty good. Now, I feel like she could stand to use like another 10% on the damage level, but you know, I think she's at a good spot now. She is a playable class. I think Succession is still the preferred spec, but hey, with all the changes that happened to Awakening, you know, it'd be nice to see that up there as well. All right, let's talk about Wizard next. So Wizard and Witch, they both got a common buff, which is for their skill Elementalization, and with that they increased the speed of it and buffed the protection, so now it's SA plus invincibility, and it flows better with other skills. And that's the general buff, which is pretty nice. But for Wizard, Awakening got damage buffs across the board for some of their skills. That is Cataclysm, Bolide of Destruction, Aqua Jail, and Arnie's Guidance. I think that's what it's called. So overall, a good buff. I felt like it was needed. Succession's still pretty strong, but I feel like this is a class that you can pick based on your preference now. But, you know, a better Wizard player might say otherwise. However, I think it's at a good spot. I don't think I'll rate it at A anymore. In my last tier list, I put it down at A with Witch, but I think it can go up a slot. I think we can actually put it in A+. Next up is Witch. She also got some buffs, a little bit on the Succession, but mostly on the Awakening side. This is also a class that you can pick based on your personal preference in terms of playstyle. For Succession, they reduced the cooldown of Prime multiple magic arrows from 5 seconds to 4 seconds, which allows it to be more reliably comboed in. And Awakening got damage increase for Equilibrium Break, Gar Roll, Thunderstorm, and Voltaic Tet. So pretty good damage buffs across the board. I feel like that really does kick her up a little bit, and I don't think she's in like the A tier. I think she is in a good spot. I've seen a lot of witches actually pull decent numbers at high-end grind spots, so we're gonna put her in A+. All right, next class is the Ranger. Now, I feel like this is a class that I didn't give enough credit for. She does perform pretty decently, and I pegged her down a bit because I still had biases from her previous performances, but you know, I think she is a decent class now, and they did recently buff her on Succession. They increased the damage of Ultimate Blasting Gust, and you know, that's a pretty important skill for her, so we're gonna put her at A+ as well. And in terms of which spec, I feel like you can go based on your personal preference, because the difference between Succession and Awakening is so huge because the playstyle is entirely different. Awakening is a melee class and Succession is bow and arrow, right? So I feel like you can go based on your personal preference, but Succession is pulling pretty good numbers. All right, next up is Sage. So Sage used to be an S tier class once upon a time, especially when he came out. After Awakening came out, it was pretty cracked. It was a very dominant spec and it performed really well in PvE. The thing that happened was there were a few nerfs on like Succession side, but primarily it was the reboots that came by, and every other class that used to be below it either caught up or went past Sage, and the classes which were already strong like Succession, Striker, they became even stronger. So Sage was left in the dust. Now last time we said he was still in a decent spot, and I think he is in a decent spot, but now he's done even better. They recently did sort of reboot him and updated him in quite a significant manner. Like Succession got quite a few buffs, that is like a crit buff on Otter's Fist, magic AP on Spear Bolt, a Rift Storm got damage buff, Spatial Fissure, and Energized Thorn got Frontal Guard. Frontal Guard is really important in high-end grind spots because FG is one of the best protections you can have. SA, you're gonna have to eat the damage, so if you don't have like really high DP, the damage could hurt. So FG is really important. Spatial Collapse and Illusion Expansion got damage buffs. Realm of Anguish got its cooldown cut down from 20 seconds to 15 seconds, and Gravity Rift got a damage increase. Now this is all for Succession. Awakening as well got buffs for Sage, so that is really good to hear because Awakening Sage used to be a phenomenal PvE class, and people used to say like it's higher APM, but when it goes, and it was one of those classes that could pull some really good trash. But they also got some damage buffs, that is on Rift Storm and Lightning Bolt, Ator Spear, and Spear Bolt. Aftershock and Spear Bolt also had their stamina consumption reduced. So pretty solid class. It could even be an S tier, but I just don't have enough information on it to make that assumption. So let's just take the safe route and put him at A+. But let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Do you think he's at the point where we can put him at S tier? Next class we're going to talk about is Maehwa. Maehwa is one of my favorite classes because their awakening skill animations just look so good and clean. I love it. But I understand a lot of you do play Succession and do enjoy Succession. Personal preference, right? But she is a really powerful class now. She's no longer on the bottom of the grind tier. She is actually a freaking strong class. A lot of changes have come through for her, and rightfully so. I feel like Succession still needs a little bit more love. Hopefully they do take a look at her again, but you know, maybe at least some mechanical changes to make her a bit more fun. However, Succession did get some changes. Blind Slash got its stamina cost reduced. Maehwa's Will now generates 1 petal if you already have 2, and Red Moon combos with Whirlwind Cut. So I hope that helps them. She's still a decent class, but it's her Awakening that steals the show here. Awakening got a lot of changes. So they renamed some of the skills, and it wasn't until the end of the patch notes that they said, hey, we're renaming these skills. But earlier in the patch note, they still used the old skills and stuff. I'm like, okay, so we're going to still call it by the old skills, but just know they did change the names of the skills. Like Sticky Snowflake got reworked. It has less cooldown, gives an overall accuracy buff, which is pretty huge because 15% accuracy, that's a lot, especially in PvP. So that is huge, but they removed the slow debuff and the minor evasion debuff on it. That was only like 3% evasion. It wasn't a big deal, but now they put it on Moonrise, whatever it's called now. It has a 9% evasion debuff. Cloud Staff, Moonlight Dash got their cooldowns reduced. Oppression now reduces DP by 30 instead of 20, which is like raw damage there, right? Frostflower got 25% crit rate. And once again, I gotta apologize. I know the names changed. It's what it is. I can't remember them yet. I haven't played it, but hey, good changes all around. Oh, and Red Moon can be usable in Awakening. Then that's like huge because that was the main thing that used to kick us into pre-awakening, right? So hey, good changes all around. Maehwa's still strong, and I think she's gotten a lot better because Awakening really did need that help. So as soon as I find her, I'm gonna put her up here. Kidding, she's right here. Okay, I really should shuffle these around, shouldn't I? But we'll do that at the end. All right, next up is Sorc. Sorc was put in A+ last time, and I think she didn't have too much change to her. There were talks about her stamina being nerfed and stuff, but I heard the community cried so much that they said, you know what, we're not going to do it. I don't know what really went down there, but good for you guys. There were some minor buffs recently. Succession got a little bit of damage buff, but Awakening got quite decent buffs. Quite a few of her skills got powered up, and you know, it's one of those classes that has received buffs like consistently over the last couple of years, like just a little bit, and they keep adding to her, and it's like, you know, hey, more power to you guys. A+. If I had to choose in terms of Succession versus Awakening, I'd go Awakening. The difference between the two, it's not too much. I think in terms of min-maxing things, Succession does pull ahead in certain areas, in certain grind spots, but overall you can get away with playing Awakening and perform pretty well. All right, next up is Hashashin, Sand Ninja. Hash. This guy finally got it. He got rebooted. He got rebooted in quite a significant manner. A lot of changes, a lot of good changes, especially for PvP came through for Succession. And overall, I think he's in a solid spot. He is one of those classes that kind of got left behind when everyone else got reboots and just got powered up. And he used to be a top tier S+ class, but now I think it's almost time to reintroduce him back into S tier because his performance in the high-end grind spots has been pretty good. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think, if you guys think he does deserve to be an S tier or not. But it just feels like with his recent changes, he does have that mechanical fluidity, he does have that damage, and in terms of like high-end grind spots, those tornadoes do work. I mean, Succession Hash is really doing some good stuff. But let me know what you guys think. Should I keep him in A+, or would you guys say he is finally back in S tier? Awakening is also decent. I just feel like Succession outshines him sort of right now. Maybe it's just the meta. Maybe there aren't enough top tier Awaken Hashes putting out content for me to review. But yeah, I feel like Hashashin's back in S tier. I feel like Succession's doing some work. Let me know. Okay, this class is gonna piss off a few people, but hey, listen. Shai did get nerfed, and the number of times that I was sitting on stream talking about how much trash loot I pulled or something because someone asked in chat, and then a Shai would pop out of nowhere and be like, well, I pulled this much on a Shai. I'm like, well, shit, good for you. But I put the blame for their nerfs purely on you people who are out spamming and talking about how much trash loot you pulled on your Shai, as if we didn't know she was a good grinder or something, but had to rub it in. They took notice, and guess what? She got nerfed. So here are the nerfs that really came through. It was a damage reduction for 1, 2, 3, try this, and hop 3. I think those are the names of the skills, I forget. Then sun, moon, stars, but then they did change the duration of some of her buff skills to 60 seconds and buffed her heal from 200 to 300, if that matters to you guys. Hey, PvP, right? But yeah, well, it was just a flat damage reduction, and a while back they did nerf her, you know, group potential as well, but it happens. I don't know if she deserves more nerfs to bring her back, because I still see Shai's pulling some really good numbers even despite the nerfs. But hey, she's still in a good spot. She's still in a playable spot. A+. She's not broken S tier, but still A+ in my opinion. All right, let's talk about Corsair next. So Corsair, I felt like was in a decent spot. I felt like she was a good grinder, but over the last 2 months, I mean, even like the week before my last tier list, she got a lot of changes and a lot of buffs. So, you know, it's good to see that they keep working on her, even though she was like one of the more underwhelming new classes they released. It's good to see that she keeps getting some buffs and some work done to her playstyle and just being improved in general. I think she is in an A+. I think she does deserve to be there, and she's not like S tier, but she is a good solid class. So here are some of the changes that happened for Succession over the past couple months. Now, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but Succession skill Wave Pout, is that it? Attack range was increased, riding waves got an iframe, cap and orders, open fire flows were improved, wave lash combo speed was increased, Tide's Kiss has add-ons now, Sea Troll got distance increased and damage increased, Storming Gale got forward guard, and you know how important FG is. Wipeout is better at comboing into overflow now. For Awakening, we got a new skill included, that is the Tide Splitter Petrarca. I believe this was done like before my last tier list, but I just wanted to put it in there because every time a new skill comes in, I get really happy to see, because for many years in BDO, like PA would never add new skills and do mechanical changes, and it's just such a good thing to see them doing that, because that's what you need to do. This isn't a game that you can parse like, you know, World of Warcraft, because you're not standing still and just bashing skills off cooldown. You know, positioning and player skill are huge factors and variables, and it's not something that you can easily put on a graph and say, hey, this class is pulling more damage than this class. There's too many variables in this game, right? So it's a good thing. Anyway, back to Awakening Corsair's changes. Close quarters got the DP debuff changed from 15 to 20, which is good. Pirate's Life for me lost its SA and cooldown was increased, but the damage was increased to compensate for it. Open fire Ceasefire damage was increased. Earth Render, Petrarca got super armor and cooldown reduced. More protection, that's great. Close quarters suppress is more fluid now, and the summons for Awakened Corsair have been improved to attack in the direction of the Corsair, and among other minor buffs. So overall, they added quite a few key things here for Corsair. It wasn't drastic changes, but it's little changes that do add up, and I feel like she does deserve her spot here in A+. Where an A+ is to be determined. So in terms of Succession versus Awakening, I would say go based on your personal preference, but depending on the spot, both are doing pretty well. All right, the number one waifu of BDO coming up, Dark Knight. So Dark Knight got a lot of changes for her Succession. Awakening, it was buffed ever since the reboot and throughout the last year or so has been receiving buffs and is now at a strong state. It is a strong class, PvP and PvE. So Dark Knight is there now. But with the recent changes for Succession, I feel like they did it a solid, and in terms of like just playability, they focused really on the mechanics of it, usability of her skills and such. So let's go over some of the changes that they did for her. While these changes are mostly PvP oriented, they do translate into PvE. Whenever you increase the speed of a skill, the flow ability, like the combo ability of certain skills, it does translate into PvE as well. So they changed the prime comma slash's damage dealt when comboed with Dusk. It works a bit different now. Airstrike got an SA. Unveiled Dagger stam cost was changed to mana cost, and Twilight Dash stam cost was reduced to 100. Prime Ravage Rake and the Flow now got a forward guard, which is great, and Wheel of Fortune into Lunacy combo speed was increased. So all of these are solid changes, and any Succession DK playing should feel that compared to what it was, it feels a lot more smooth to play and a lot more playable. We all hate when you run out of stamina. It's the worst thing when your class has a high stamina cost, and I hope this really does help the DKs. But I think like in terms of Succession versus Awakening, I would still lean towards Awakening for endgame PvE grinding, but there's still a place for Succession DK and PvP and such. So A+, solid class, one of the best A+ out there, well deserved. All right, next up is Kuno. Kunoichi. Now listen, Kuno is one of those classes that I know no one's ever gonna sit there and say, yeah, she's top tier or anything, because she's not. She does lack the damage compared to like some other S tier classes, but they did improve her. We can't ignore that. They are improving her, and that's good. I don't think she's in an unplayable state now. I feel like she is in a decent state. I think she is a decent class. If you want to play her, I think you can get away with playing her. She's not an S tier class, but I think she's in a low A+. I think she's at a decent spot now. Let's go over some of the changes that happened to her. Succession is more mechanically fluid. They did make her flow a lot better between some of her skills and increase a little bit of the damage. Awakening is what really takes the cake here though. They increase the speed of lethal spin and how it flows, and they also increase the PvP damage if that is something you're looking for. But the flows of her skills have gotten faster. They reduced the stamina cost, and they did update the visual effects of like the skills. So hey, style points, right? So overall, she did get some buffs, much needed, and I feel like they could do to give her more like around like 10 to 15% more damage. I feel like she could use it. But it's finicky with these damage calculations and such, because if you give a certain class more damage, the way the number of hits work, the way the class plays, it could be like ridiculously broken in a lower end spot, like comparing orcs to like Gaifinrazia, right? It could be broken in a lower end spot, not really translate to the high end spot, or if they do try to buff it for the high end spot, it could like break somewhere else. Buffs and nerfs in this game is just so finicky because of the variability with the player skill level as well as the grind spots you're grinding at with your class, with respect to your class. I just hope like every class has a spot where they're really good at, or can grind very efficiently at without the player feeling like, oh man, I'm losing money. But I think Kuno is at a good spot now. I think it's at A+. It could use a bit more buffs, I feel, but it's not like in an unplayable state anymore, in my opinion. But maybe some people will disagree. If I had to choose, I would say go based on your playstyle there. Kuno is a duelist. Take that into account. If you're playing a duelist class and you're not playing the dominant PvP spec that you're good at and taking advantage of the fact that you can go and bully people out of the grind spots, then I feel like you're missing out. All right, next up is Valkyrie. Valkyrie is a phenomenal class. Her awakening after the reboot has been crazy, especially in low end grind spots with her base bar R&B spam. But even in higher end grind spots, she does pretty good. Her awakening is a solid A+ class. I still feel like she is, but recently her succession did get some buffs. Damage on Sword of Judgment was increased. Celestial Eye buff was added to Prime Celestial Sphere, which makes her Sword of Judgment do 1 additional hit whenever you use it within like 6 to 7 seconds. I forgot the exact number. And also they increased the damage for Judgment of Light. What they were trying to do is they wanted to make her signature skills, you know, stand out more, and that was Sword of Judgment. So, you know, I hope it helps the succession Valkyries. I know Awakening outshines her right now, but hey, I feel like she's still one of the best A+ classes out there. Valkyrie, folks. Next up is my most recent PvP muse, the Archer. I had so much fun PvPing on him because my gear score is freaking low compared to like the kind of people I'm facing. I was at like 660 something, like 663 or something, and I had to face against like 700, 730 people, right? I can't really stand against them. I got one shot and I barely do any damage to them, but I wanted to play RBF, and you know, I was able to play Archer there and actually frag out. It was actually fun. For the first time, I was actually enjoying RBF in this game. So yeah, that was pretty nice. But in terms of PvE, he's always been pretty decent after the reboots. Before the reboots, he was suffering, but after the reboots, they did well. Bit high on the APM side, but pretty solid. Though recently there were some more changes done to him. So the first thing I want to go over is Grand Bloom. So what they did was it made it so that you can choose to lock it, and when you do, full bloom would toggle, and this was useful for high-end PvE grind spots. They changed full bloom to melee attack damage, and so you had to be in close range, but the overall damage was increased, so this was useful for high-end grinding. They also added a new skill called Sunfall, which was not a very powerful skill in its own, but it acts as the filler. So that was one thing that I noticed, that there was something missing in terms of the PvE rotation, and having another filler, always a good thing. And finally, for Luthergon's Call, they added forward guard, which, you know, as I've mentioned before in this video, like, forward guards are important. They are one of the best protections you can have in high-end grind spots. All protected, you're dishing out damage and not taking any. So always a good thing. Archer, solid class. I don't think he's S tier, but you know, a very notable A+ class in my opinion. I hope they do add a little bit more and maybe someday get him to the S tier. That'd be nice, but hey, I'm rooting for him. All right, next up, one of the hottest classes in the game, Nova. So recently Nova did get buffed for her succession primarily. She got raw damage buff for Past Pawn, King of the Dead, Fiancé or Fianchetti, I don't know how to say it, Frozen Darkness, and I think that was about it, but it was raw damage buffs. People did tell me that, hey, she's not playable. She's not great, but she's playable in succession. Awakening is still better in my opinion, and from what I can tell from other Novas, Awakening did get a few minor changes. They did increase the PvP damage for Brutal Ring, but more importantly for PvE, they did change some of her stamina consumption. Swooping Ring now costs SP instead of stamina, and the stamina cost for Break Orbit was reduced. So, you know, small victories. Take them where you can get them. And of course, I totally forgot to drag her up here. Next class is the Guardian. I revered her as an S tier class. I felt like she was always strong, a powerful grinder, and they made her stronger. Let's go. So here are the buffs that happened recently. They made her grab faster. I know that's a PvP thing, but hey, that's nice. They did make her grab faster, and I think they might have increased the range a bit. I forget. But more importantly, for Awakening, God Incinerator and Searing Fang, big skills, got their damage increased. Nice. For Succession, damage was increased for Prime Mountain Slam, Avalanche Strike, Mutilation. And you know what? Succession is pretty cracked, I must say. Like, I think she's almost there in terms of like trash loot, and if not better than Awakening in certain areas, because Awakening has to stand still and you're not sitting there in forward guard, right? So you do take the brunt of the damage. If you go into a high-end spot, that could be detrimental for you when you're grinding, but you know, Awakening is low APM. There is a plus and a minus. I would say if you want something low APM and you can take the hits at the grind spots, go Awakening. But if you don't mind a little bit higher on the APM side, Succession is a freaking monster, especially in PvP nowadays. Like she collapsed, man. So solid class. I'd say, you know what, Guardian still deserves a spot, S tier. Let me know what you guys think. All right, the list is getting shorter. Next class, let's go over the Mystic. Over the last few months, she had no changes. At least I don't think so. Maybe I missed it, but I don't think they did much to her, if anything. So, you know, keep your spot at S tier, babe. You deserve it. Now, I know exactly why there haven't been much changes. One, I know some people would be like, well, she's balanced. She's at a good spot. She does really well. Look at Gyfin Rise. No. Listen. Now, I know exactly why there haven't been any changes for Mystic. It's because Perlibus is hard at work at coming up with great costumes for her, which look cool as fuck, and stop objectifying her. This is 2022. Cut it out. Come on, give us cool costumes already. Anyway, guys, S tier, I lean towards Succession, but in Gyfin Razia, for some reason, Awakening just works really well there. So, you know, personal preference, honestly. If you're in a lower end grind spot, I would actually say Mystic's Succession does pull better because Awakening has a bit of a ramp up in the damage. But when you're at the high end grind spot, you're not blowing up the mobs and they do take a few hits. So the ramp up time is okay in that regards. All right, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Musa. He got nerfed recently. Him and Succession Striker are the two classes which got notable nerfs. Now, what they nerfed for Musa is this. Before the nerf, people used to spam the same damn skill over and over and think they're good and pull insane amount of trash loot. Not even just like 5 or 10% more, like absurd amounts more. Like I'm talking 30-40% more trash loot in some areas, and it was ridiculous and it was broken. It needed to be nerfed. What they nerfed was when certain skills are on cooldown, they get reduced damage. So whenever you try to spam Cyclone Slash, Gale, Blooming on cooldown, they do less damage, like some between 20 and 30%. There were varying numbers, but regardless of the change, I still see Succession Musas doing it and still pulling good freaking trash loot. There are videos out there which compare the pre-nerf and after nerf, and you know what? It doesn't seem like it hurt him too much. He's still a strong class. I know in some lower end spots where you're like flying through the mobs like in orcs and stuff, some people did get hurt by it because of the AP bracket they're at, but once you get to the high end bracket, I think he's still a powerful freaking class. I think he's still S tier. Before, I know a lot of you argued in the chat that he was S plus, but I didn't want to put him there because I did catch wind of the nerfs coming from him. But you know, S tier is where I felt like he was gonna land, and I was right. Yeah, S tier. Succession for PvE. Awakening is still kind of weak in PvE compared to Succession regardless of the nerf. Only thing is now you have to play it how he was meant to be played. You can't spam one skill. Come on. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Warrior for a second. He also didn't have too many changes. He did receive some nerfs in regarding to PvP, but that could translate a little bit in terms of survivability in PvE, but they didn't really change much in terms of PvE. He still holds a spot in S tier in my opinion. He's still a strong class. So what they changed was he had really ridiculous amount of slows in Awakening for a certain skill. They toned that down, and also they removed the stacking of the DP buffs he had, which, you know, everyone knew was a bit excessive. He was tanky as hell, but they did make it so that it doesn't stack anymore. But overall, he's still strong. I don't think he got hit too hard in terms of PvE. I felt like that was just tuning and balancing. Regarding to Succession and Awakening, Succession is not as popular, but it does some serious work, man. But honestly, the difference isn't too great. It's not in the thousands in terms of trash loot, so go based on your personal preference on what you want to play. All right, next up is Ninja. So there were a few minor changes done for Ninja. Damage on prime skills were increased a little bit, and they did fix some issues he had. Awakening got add-ons for Mock Explosion. Not drastic changes, but I put him at a really high spot last time because he does do really good when you put in like really high APM. You've got the gear and you got the skill. But I do feel like compared to like what Succession Musa was, I did overestimate him compared to the other classes. So for that reason, my apologies guys there, but Succession is still a top tier class in my opinion. I feel like it is still at S tier. He can do some really crazy damage. I think he's still a really good class. Let me know in the comments if you guys disagree with that, and if you think he's below these classes, assuming, you know, you're skill capped, right? You're playing at the highest level with the appropriate amount of APM. And then there were 3. So initially I thought there wouldn't be much to go over in terms of the top end, but there is. Let's talk about the Lahn. Lahn actually got quite a few changes to her. I always revered her as one of the top grinders, but I felt like, you know, she fell out of the meta in terms of popularity, but she's still freaking strong. She never lost her power by any means. Comparing Succession to Awakening did catch up after the reboots, and it was doing pretty damn good now. Like, in terms of the APM requirement, it's not too drastic either. Awakening's not that insanely APM intensive or anything like that. But they did make some changes to both her Succession and Awakening. Let's go over a few of them. While it's not a top parsing character, it's still a really good class for many rotations. But let's go over some of the changes they did to her. First up, Succession Dismemberment. It only costs 100 stamina now. Succession Cymbidium, however you pronounce it, doesn't pause your stamina recovery when you're using the skill. Your stamina keeps recovering. It doesn't cost any stamina, obviously. Those aren't huge changes, but hey, you know, they're not nerfs, right? So pretty notable in my opinion. Awakening though did get a little bit more in terms of the changes. So Taunting Debt doesn't pause stamina recovery anymore. They improved comboing speed of certain skills. Earthly Pain was changed from minus 15 DP to minus 20 DP. Soul Raid cooldown was changed from 17 seconds to 15 seconds. Tailspin now gives us minus 6% evasion debuff, which is awesome. Like, any evasion debuff is huge, especially when it's like, you know, 6%, not 3%, but that's pretty good. Honestly, if I had to play Lahn, if I had to main her, I would actually play Awakening over Succession. I know Awakening is a bit more intensive than Succession. Succession was always known as one of the low APM and the chill classes to grind on. But, you know, in terms of PvE performance, Awakening is there. Awakening does well. And you know, whenever you're playing a class which is pretty good at dueling, you know, hey, it's always nice to have that PvP potential along with the grind, right? So Lahn, I still think she's one of the meta classes. I think she is still one of the strong classes. Maybe in the high-end grind spots like, you know, Hex Sanctuary, she's not one of the preferred ones, but in many rotations, she's still a strong class. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think she should come down to S tier, or she should maintain her spot at S+? And then there were two. So let's talk about Berserker really quick, since his changes weren't as drastic or anything. Succession actually got a minor buff. They added crit rate for Feral Rage, I believe. I believe that was for PvE. But Awakening got damage buffs for Seismic Blast, Flow Scatter Shot, and a Giant Leap can now be used on an incline. Hey, buffs are buffs, but Awakening is still below Succession in my opinion, just because of how cracked Succession is. Great damage, mobility. On top of that, very, very pleasant on the APM. It is not at all APM intensive, so I still think he is one of the best classes to play right now. Maybe it does vary whenever it gets to like certain grind spots versus others, but overall, I feel like he's good in so many spots. So S+ still, Succession Berserker. And then there was one I am saving the best for last, of course, Striker. Let's go. He got nerfed recently. Now, whenever the nerfs were first announced in Global Alec, everyone's like, dude, he lost 50% of the damage. Whoa, he's gone now. I'm like, I was like, what the hell are you guys talking about? You can clearly see that they nerfed the discharge hits, not the actual skill. Now, don't get me wrong, discharge is a huge amount of damage, and he hits like a truck. He has so much mobility, so much damage. He outputs his skills so quickly, and on top of that, he's tanky. For some reason, whenever I go from Awakening to Succession, I feel a lot tankier. Though I do prefer to play Awakening because it's a lot more chill, really nice AoEs, solid class. Even in high-end grind spots, Awakening is my favorite spec to play. But Succession Striker, listen, that when I saw the nerfs, I'm like, that's not much. That is not much at all. He's not going to be dropping it tier or anything. Like, it was a very minor nerf. Like, that's my opinion. If anyone wants, any parsers want to disagree with that, good on you. But, you know, I called it out. Look at the comparisons. It's not much at all. At most, he has to just look at the mob one more time and just shake his hand or something. So here's the nerfs. The number of hits for his discharge skills on Ankle Hook, Martial Deva, Bombardment, and Final Blow were reduced from 6 to 3 and 6 to 4. So that's why people were saying, yo, that's a 50% damage nerf. But discharge isn't our complete damage. That it's a minor thing in my opinion. And of course, the Roaring Tiger, Prime Roaring Tiger also got damage nerfed by 5%. Overall, like, listen, if they wanted to nerf him, make him less tanky. Like, for some reason, he is able to tank so freaking hard. And Ankle Hook is like not even a skill that we use all too often. Like, it's not the main priority a skill that we use in our rotations. Sure, if you're going the adamantine tree for your DPS route, it could make a bit more of a difference, but that's not the top parsing DPS rotation now for Succession Striker. The adamantine tree is useful when you're fighting high-end mobs and you need the frontal guard, and it does come into play there. It does have its spot, but overall it's not a big nerf. He's still freaking strong. He is still a powerful class. He gets to keep his spot, okay? If you want to nerf him, let me tell you how to nerf him. Reduces actual damage a little bit by about 10%, 15%. Reduces tankiness. He takes hits like a champ. Like, I do not understand why. Some classes get absolutely clobbered while he's just standing there and is like, what up? I don't know. I'm not an expert on this, but that's just my opinion. Succ Striker, still strong. Awakened Striker is poggers. Awakened Striker is what you got to play if you want to play a Striker. Like, trust me, it's chill APM, big AoEs. You can't go wrong with it. I used it to grind every grind spot all the way up to Gaifanrazia. So anyway, that's it for this video, guys. I did say that we would try to order these. I hate doing that. I hate ordering these in terms of like, you know, which is better on each tier. Like, I feel like the variability in terms of a player's skill is more than enough to justify avoiding doing that. But hey, you know, if I had to pick a little bit, you know, I'd probably move it around like this a little bit. I put Nova above the Drak. I'll put them over here. I think that's okay. Maybe you can come up behind here, Ranger. Witch and Wizard, you can go above Shai just because Shai's a midget. And let's see, Valkyrie, DK. I think DK is really strong. I feel like Sorc and Valk are neck and neck. Sage is good. Archer's good. Yeah, I think this is an order I would be okay with over here. Now let's look at the S tier. Actually, that is a order I would agree with. Maybe Warrior would go up ahead of Mystic just a little bit. Debatable. And finally for S plus, it's hard to say. I would probably keep it as it is. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. I hope you found it helpful. The goal of this isn't to say like, you know, this class is better than this class, yada yada yada. I mean, this is just something to help you make a decision when you're trying to pick a class. It's something fun to watch for some people, and you know, it's just always good to get a second opinion. You can look on YouTube. There's a ton of tier lists, and some of them greatly vary. Like, someone tried to put Archer as B tier, bottom of the bottom. Get out of here. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comment section how you guys would change this tier list. Anyway, that's it for this video. Check me out at twitch.tv/I'mPansy. Please do hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications when I drop a new video. Once again, big shout out to our sponsor for this video, Raid Shadow Legends. Check them out. The link's in the description down below. That's it for this video, guys. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.